So we begin with very basic concepts of space and place. We often use them very interchangeably in our everyday conversation, right? I mean, to us, it doesn't really matter if we use the word space or place, but with if you've if you've read humanist geographers who are looking at human cultures, right? For them, space and place are two entirely different concepts, although they're very interrelated, but they're not the same. So for this first part, I'll be borrowing a lot from these humanist geographers and what do they understand by space and place, because this session is titled Thinking Spatially, right? So that's the first part where we delve a little bit into the theoretical background of what do we understand by space and what do we understand by place, and then we move on to this very iconic film, Blade Runner, directed by Ridley Scott. In fact, Ridley Scott has a film that's screening right now in all the theaters that's running, Gladiator. So he's the same director. And through that, I try to build up an argument that the kind of imagination we have regarding futuristic cities, why is it often so Asia coded, right? Why do we see Asia so much in all of these cities? And it all began with Blade Runner, and then we move on to the primary text, which is these two anime films that came out in 1995 and 2004, uh, right about the time that I was born, and then perhaps you were born. So they're that old, and focus on just these two scenes in the film, not the entire story, not the entire narrative or the characters, but these two particular scenes that I'll also be playing for you guys. Okay. So humanist geographers understand that place belongs to the realm of meaning and experience, two very key words, and that the more abstract space transforms into a place when it gets imbued with a sense of intimacy, of belonging, right? The space is more abstract while place connotes something that's more personal, right? So for instance, take the word house. A house is a very general term, right? Any place where people live is a house, but when does it transform into a home? It's when you start inhabiting it and putting your own objects and create your own memories. That's when it transforms into a home. So, home is a place, and house is, in that sense, a space. Okay. Um, Places are intertextual sites because various texts and discursive practices based on previous texts are deeply inscribed on their landscapes and institutions. What do we mean by that? Unlike space, which might lack a sense of history, places are imbued with history. And history, not in the sense that we study it as a discipline, but it could also mean mythologically. Or how do we see it in oral tradition, right? How do we see it in the memory of the community? Right. So Delhi for like I recently learned that Delhi for the longest time was a very arid city. There were not a lot of plants in Delhi, which is not something that you will believe if you look at Delhi right now. It's still very polluted, but I also did not know that Delhi is also one of the greenest capitals, at least in India. Right. And once I started learning more about it, the my perception of what Delhi was and what it is now also changed. Similarly, it can also be applied to, let's say, your colleges. I'll take, for instance, my own college, Zakir Husain College, right? Before working here, I probably did not know much about it. But even in my head, it wasn't really just a space. It would still be a place because I could Google it and come across its history and learn that it's actually it's the oldest college in the country, right? And learn about all of its history. So that the historical aspect is what also transforms a space into a place, right? And then some other geographer, he says, is place is an innate faculty possessed in some degree by everyone that connects us to the world. So such a simple sorted definition. Maybe when you look at a park, right? right? It's a space, people come, people go, you don't even know them maybe most of the time. But if you start frequenting the park daily, you start befriending the dogs, maybe you start befriending that old uncle as well. It turns into a place, does it not, right? So it's our innate faculty that when we look at a space through our own, maybe our own yearning to belong, to make it our own, we turn it into a place, right? So then what does place then incorporate? It is a location which could be geographical, it can be something that can be mapped, it could be a locale, meaning the conditions of existence comprising of social, political, cultural, and economic relations, but also how people live their lives every day as individuals tied to some social and political identity. So Delhi ka agar aap make dekhenge, you will realize that oftentimes obviously there's this argument between Delhi and Bombay people, which is a very weird argument to have. But even within Delhi people, you see, oh, you are South Delhi, you're Jamuna Par and whatnot. There was this very funny video on the internet that went viral where these two guys were fighting with each other, and the other one was saying, "Idu to Jamuna Par se hai, idu to South Delhi wala hai," so on and so forth. So where are these ideas coming from? What do we mean when we said South Delhi? Yes, South Delhi is not just rich people, it also has a lot of slum areas, right? But our understanding, general understanding, is that the rich people belong to South Delhi and migrants and other people, Yamuna Par and whatever other areas of Delhi. So that is what we understand by locale. What class of people, or what is the nature of their occupation, so on and so forth, also gives a place its identity. Mhm. Now, for some scholars, individual human experience is paramount, and the concrete reality of place emerges from a total experience combining sensory perceptions and mental reflection. So, for literature students, this is very important for you when you think of Wordsworth's poem, right? Or any other romantic poet for that instance, or any poet who is thinking about a place, writing about it, or so many of you who think about your hometowns. If you're not a Delhiite and you've traveled, you're living here, you've left your hometown behind, you are no longer there, but you still think of it and you get homesick and you want to go back home, right? Every chance you get. So that sensation, it's coming from the memories that you've built while you were there, right? Mental reflection as well, thinking about it, dwelling in nostalgia. Any such elemental sense of place also rests upon the assumption, or this is a criticism of place. Place often is thought of as a very static category. When I think of my hometown, or when I think of even my home, to me, it probably still resembles how I left it 12 years ago. But it has changed so much. It has changed so much, and people who live there are accustomed to that change. But to me, who will visit it probably once in a year, all of that seems so very new, right? So does a place, does it remain fixed? Yes, Jayavardhan? You can type it. You can type it out and I'll address it. Right. So where was I at? Places then in a lot of these, uh, oh, that's fine. In a lot of these early scholars of geography, they think of place as very, very static, and space is something that can be maneuvered and changed and manipulated over time. But scholars who are dealing with, let's say, globalization and its impact on places, right? Of nowadays, what do we see? We see that places, almost all the big cities resemble each other. Huge skyscrapers, same kind of, I don't know, glass houses. Even in Delhi, you will see a lot of glass houses, even though our climate does not support glass houses. Where is it coming from? It's a Western import once again, right? As simple as that. So people like, let's say, Doreen Massey would see place as something that also changes. Maybe that change is not visible immediately. Obviously, it takes time, right? But it's also a category that keeps on changing. So this is basically what we understand of space, and place. Any question till here? Any observation, comment? No? ठीक है, बाद में भी we can take up questions. Now we'll move directly to cyberpunk cinema, and to be honest, what this theoretical part will not make immediate sense with cyberpunk cinema, but it will make sense when we look at the clips. Okay, what exactly is cyberpunk? Cyberpunk is a subgenre of science fiction. Science fiction in itself is a very new genre. In literature, we have this field called genre studies. Not all works of literature belong to a genre, right? You listen to music. I hope everyone listens to music here, because I have had students who don't listen to music. So I hope you guys listen to music, and you listen to particular genres. Like you might have a favorite genre of music. What do we understand by genre then? Because you are familiar with genre.
Yeah, perhaps like some set of characteristics that are perhaps exclusive to a certain set of music, or any category of creative work.
Yeah, very cool. So particular characteristics, right? In literature, we use the word formulaic. When a work of literature is follows a formula, then it belongs to a genre. Now, this can be complicated, but we are keeping it simple right now. Okay, so the best example of it is detective fiction. Now, detective fiction again is a very new form of writing a novel, because novel in itself is also the most modern form of doing literature. So even within that, you have detective fiction that emerged probably with Poe in the form of short stories, but then later on developed by the likes of Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, and then we reach the golden age of detective fiction with Agatha Christie. And detective fiction is formulaic because you read a detective fiction novel, and how does it start? Starts with the discovery of a murder. Detective arrives, detective interrogates, detective uncovers certain clues, detective calls all the people together, and the criminal is revealed. That's classic detective fiction, right? That's what happens in CID as well, right? Pradyumna and other people, they go and they discover crime. Eventually, the final thing is that the criminal is discovered. So that's the formula that one needs to follow throughout. Science fiction is a little different from detective fiction insofar as the plot is not formulaic, but the settings are. Earlier science fiction, I would say, I mean, Frankenstein is a bit of proto science fiction, but for the sake of like my own argument, I would say proper science fiction would emerged after World Wars, right? And with that, you see a lot of that science fiction focuses on primarily two spaces of two things. One is outer space exploration, different planets. What would it be like to live on that planet? And that is informed by NASA's mission to the moon. The other arena is robot technology, and this other arena is what is linked with cyberpunk. It would eventually lead to the subgenre of science fiction called cyberpunk, because the main protagonists in cyberpunk are usually either unemployed hackers or cyborgs, right? So the definition of cyberpunk is a genre of science fiction set in a lawless subculture of an oppressive society dominated by computer technology. All of these genres, I mean, if you look at it, their emergence is right around the time when all of these technologies are also emerging. Cyberpunk becomes huge when computers become huge. It's not like there isn't a conversation. Very interestingly, in 1960s they have this conference where these very intelligent scientists, they gather together, and they are talking about human consciousness. Can human consciousness be converted into data? Can it be converted into an immaterial form other than brain? Can it be stored in any other place other than the human brain? Now, just thinking about your contemporary time period, do you think that that's a possibility for your consciousness to be transformed into 0101 binary digits, some form of an algorithm.
Unsure. I don't really
Hmm.
know if that's going to happen.
It's happening all the time. It's happening all the time. Not exactly your consciousness, but your consciousness is being mapped. Look at the search page of your Instagram. The algorithm catches on to what I mean. Sometimes you get advertisements that you've never even typed onto your device. So they're already guessing what you are already thinking, right? The AI is already learning your patterns. But these scientists who gathered in 1960s, their solution was very simple. Now, why would they be even discussing why should human consciousness be turned into something immaterial? Because immortality is something that's desired, right? If you die, what if your body dies but your consciousness survives? It is stored somewhere. So that's where they were coming from, and they had a very simple solution. We will turn human brain into a pulp and feed it to a computer, like a very violent way, but that's what they could think of at that time. Okay, obviously nowadays different methods have been created. I'm not really well versed with them, but within cyberpunk narratives, you see that in the figure of the cyborg. Who is a cyborg? A cyborg is a cybernetic organism. It's a short form for cybernetic organism. All of us are also sort of cyborgs right now. Yes or no? A cyborg is someone who would have a mechanized hand. The hand can turn into a weapon at any point in time. uh, a metallic body. If you've seen Teen Titans, have you seen Teen Titans, the cartoon? Yeah. So there's a character called Cyborg in Teen Titans who is sort of like a cyborg boy, half cyborg. And would you say he's a machine? Because most of its body part is machine, but he's humanized, right? He's not really shown to us as a machine. I'm asking whether all of us are cyborgs.
Yeah, ma'am, we were, I mean, some of us from Consortium were in the session of, I forgot her name, but she's just teaches at Dr. Zakir Husain College as well. And she was presenting her paper on marked outwards and
Yeah,
dystopia.
Shraddha,
Shut
yeah.
down, exactly,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah.
And we were talking about how we are moving towards a post-human society where, I mean, we are almost on the verge of becoming cyborgs. For example, like the transplantation of like this artificial heart or like that device on your heart that keeps you going. So we're almost there.
But even at this moment, we are all cyborgs. Why I'm saying that is that almost all of us are wearing headphones and using computers. What are these enhancements of our own faculties? So you use your phone as if it's your own extension. Yes, Rudraksh? Yeah.
I was wondering,
Hmm.
I partially agree with you on this thing that we're using headphones and the devices we're using are partially are attached to our outer requirements. But do
Hmm.
you think without actually the conversion of our inner consciousness into mechanization of our inner consciousness, do you think without that we're still cyborgs?
Hmm. Good question. But
In fact,
like
I
I
have a
said,
follow-up to that question.
yeah.
Sorry.
Are you that? Can you repeat?
I'm saying I have a follow-up to that question, if that's all right.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
So
yeah.
we're trying to understand a consciousness that is in an ideal situation mechanized. We
Hmm.
must understand that this consciousness is given birth by a pre-existing human consciousness.
Hmm.
It's sort of a mechanized, uh, an artificial consciousness is derivative of a human consciousness. And
Hmm.
therefore, how do we practically, pragmatically, and completely separate the workings and the arbitrariness of a human-like consciousness into, let's say, a completely programmed, mechanized consciousness that could be called separate from this human
Hmm.
consciousness
Hmm.
completely?
I think your question, this answer to your question, I mean, I don't have my own answer, but the two films that we are looking at today, in fact, all the three films that we'll be looking at today sort of deals with that question. What happens to human consciousness and its arbitrariness when it's mechanized? And in especially in Mamoru Oshii's first film, the anxiety that the central character has, Motoko, right? It's vis-a-vis her own consciousness. She does not think that it's real. It's been planted. And she wants to have that original consciousness that you are referring to. But we are living in that world where the origin of that consciousness no longer matters, right? And then she encounters this other program that does not have a body but is pure consciousness. It emerged as a program. It was created primarily as a program, but through its interaction with different things on the internet, with different people, different other programs, it began to evolve. Now, I'm not sure technically how that's going to happen because I'm not a computer scientist, but within that narrative, that program begins to evolve and come into its own. If you've seen this film called Her, that's primarily what happens with the computer program. Joaquin Phoenix character falls in love with her. She's just an OS system. That's what he thinks of her. But she's continuously interacting with a lot of other people who are using that program and simultaneously evolving. That's what Google is also trying to do with Gemini, right? Trying to it's making it read all the search results and what we do, what humans do on the internet, so that Gemini can imitate it more and more. And I don't know how if it's going to go beyond imitation. Probably yes. Yes, Ayut. Any you want to add
So
anything?
this is another thing that is why I'm asking these questions is because again, this is a fairly new topic, fairly new phenomena, and perhaps I've thought about this before, and I myself have not arrived at an answer. But when, let's say, we think of the idea of originality or authenticity, which is
Hmm.
this process, correct? Because we are um, evolving as a collective consciousness that draws from all of the knowledge and behavioral tendencies of previous consciousnesses coming together, having come together to create a sort of treasure trove of knowledge. And essentially, our brains and our behavior and our characteristics, they develop through interaction with other people. Therein, none of us can claim originality in any sense of the word.
Hmm.
And similarly, for this artificial consciousness, obviously it's a derivative of this already non authentic consciousness. And therefore, through interaction with other artificial consciousnesses and other um, pockets of knowledge available to it, it develops. Now, are these processes ultimately different? Because we as human beings, like I just said, we can hardly lay claim to any sort of authenticity, because when we think of our digital selves, we think of it as reproductions of what we could be originally and what our essence carries, right? That is what Walter Benjamin would call the aura of an artwork. So this originality is in any case lost
Hmm.
when we grow together. I mean, any aware person knows that none of our ideas are original, none of our tendencies are original. And again, that leads to the larger question of predestination versus free will, wherein perhaps through your specific patterns, which have emerged out of interacting with other Homo sapiens, it is predetermined how you're going to behave. Where lies that impulse of human originality then? And is this process essentially, can it at all be separated from the kind of process that is going on towards the creation of AI or the way that AI
Hmm.
is developing right now? Perhaps the way that we have determined that AI should develop comes right from how we instinctively develop our consciousnesses and our brains when we interact with each other.
I can only give you a literary answer, not a technical one.
I'm not
Yeah.
looking for an answer, but perhaps
Hmm.
a discussion about this.
But so even with humans, with our genes, right? You're absolutely right that even it's encoded within our genes. And also, there's this thing. I mean, we use memes for those little images, funny images, but memes are also cultural information that's uh, carried forward from one era to another, right? So that's there definitely. I feel like this question of originality and authenticity became important with the coming in of capitalism. Prior to that, it was not such an essential question, because creating anything was a community driven exercise, not really author backed. Or I don't think people would have wanted their names stamped onto things. But with the coming in of capitalism, you can read Foucault's essay on it. Uh, what does he say? Something on the author. I'm forgetting the name, but he's written a whole lot of essay on it. And there he points out that this idea of originality or giving something a name is part of capitalism, because that's how you make profit. That's how you slot things, right? So, I mean, I can answer you, probably add to the discussion in this way, that when we are thinking of authenticity, originality, think when these questions became important. Think when the figure of the author as a as a celebrity, as a personality became important.